We have a laser pointer here, too, that works, which is neat. So what's up, everybody? My name is Jerry Paffendorf. Real quick, I moved to Detroit about 1.5 years ago from San Francisco, and then New York before that, and LA before that, and Houston before that, and Portland before that, and New Jersey, where I grew up before that. So I've kind of bounced around in my life. Have lived a life of an artist and a very internet-excited and conscious person. And what I was doing in California and Silicon Valley was cooking up with friends ideas for startups, working on companies, trying to connect ideas from social networks and maps and video games to real life in creative new ways. And Detroit was calling my name. I describe it best probably as like spider signals, like saying like, here's a really great place that you should go. It's not known for its online or internet work, but is a city that's changing and that could use some of these tools to help it change in the way that it wants to change. And I'll shut up and let Mary introduce herself, and then we're going to tag team this bad boy.
Hi, so I'm Mary Lorene Carter, and I grew up in Southeast Michigan and have lived in and around Detroit my whole life. My fields of passion are fine arts, art history, and library science. And I've always been fascinated by the idea of taking several hundred different tiny parts and having them collaborate into a network that makes something larger and more interesting than any one of them could be on their own. And so I was working with this philosophy in an analog sense, and when I met Jerry Paffendorf, obviously the next step was to collaborate. And this is what we've come up with.
Cool. So here's the adventure. It's kind of an adventure. It's still evolving. We've come a long way. And as you'll see, the title of the talk I think is pretty apt. How big can you make an inch? When I moved to Detroit, I didn't know anybody at first. I was using couchsurfing.org to find places to stay and meet friends. And I rented a studio at the Russell Industrial Center, which some of you might know. And in my, yes, for the Russell. And in my studio space, we were trying to figure out what would be the concepts for connecting the internet to real life in Detroit in interesting new ways. And obviously, I think the secret is out. There's a lot of vacant land in the city. People are trying to figure out what to do with it. It's not that hard to come by if you go and look for it and seek it out. And so what we started doing, we got this idea to do micro real estate. This would be like a very simple, very cheap, very easy way to become a kind of social landowner in the city without having to... Again, always me. A very simple, cheap, fun, and easy way to become a social landowner in the city without taking on a big obligation of needing to tend to a whole field or a lot or a house or whatnot. You could participate if you were in the city, if you were outside of the city. And so we started imagining all these cool things that people might do with micro real estate. So the first thing we did, we didn't even have any land yet. We taped down this grid of 10,000 inches onto the floor of the Russell, and we started inviting people to purchase future inches of Detroit. They were future because we didn't have the land yet. We put up a project on Kickstarter.com, which is a great fundraising site. You can invite people to help fund your ideas, and started selling these spaces. We had someone who was a friend at the time and who's become a great friend since then, kicked in an initial investment of 1,000 inches and to really get the project going. And then additional people kept hopping on and started trying to figure out what does this mean to become a tiny landowner, with a parcel of land that you can't really build a house on or even stand on. It's going to be more about the social network and more about outside of the box creativity. But in support of this, we didn't just want to do it where it was like a novelty thing that was like totally in the air. We wanted to use internet tools, use maps, make our own social maps that could support this so that the online experience could be tangible in some way. So we built these cool maps. This map corresponds exactly to the taped grid that was on the floor of the Russell. We called it a microhood. We named the first one Plymouth. All these different little colored parcels represent land holdings by different investors. So the biggest one is that one up there that's 1,000, and then it ranges from 1 to 500 and everywhere in between. We started sending out deed packages to our investors. So if you got 12 inches or more, we'd send you a square-inch golden deed and a little magnifying glass and like notes and stuff from the property. And we started doing this before we even had any land. We had to bootstrap like crazy. So eventually we had enough money to buy a piece of land. We bought a lot on the east side of the city. Plymouth is actually at Verner Highway in Holcomb. And we built this concrete form which corresponds exactly to the online map, so that if investors visited their property, they'd be able to find their space in particular and do what they wanted to, if it fit inside of their space. And we were trying to think, I don't know if that's a little dark, but we were trying to think, originally we were thinking hard about how do we offer city services for these microhoods. So you're an investor and you want to do something, how do we help you do it? And so one of the first things we did is we built this solar-powered web streaming camera. It was basically an iPhone in a birdhouse with a solar panel and a battery. And the idea was that you could tune into your property. And so as things changed, you could watch it happen online. It would be engaging. But the day after we put it up, somebody had chopped it down and taken the panel off, so we got our taste of, don't leave nice stuff in the vacant lot in Detroit, I guess is a great lesson.
This is why we can't have nice things.
that we have. I hope you all leave edified with that. And then, to answer this question, what kind of stuff do people do with their spaces on here? This is an artist named Ken Hudson who lives in Toronto. He bought 100 inches. He just shipped us all these paintings of these squirrels that he stencils all over the city there. And he's like, please put this on my land. So we get all sorts of stuff like that, which is really fun. But our whole attitude is that while we're having fun with this stuff and being playful with it, we're always looking for the ideas that might become more significant or might become more meaningful and affect people and places in really real and noticeable ways. So after we filled in our first 10,000 inches, our first microhood, we started a new microhood, again without owning any land yet. We named this one Hello World. It's in progress right now. I think people that signed up and paid, I think you guys have an inch coming in Hello World. And we started thinking about how can we make this whole proposition, this narrative, this experience more compelling. We started playing around with adding more characters to it. This little inch with eyes, his name is Inchy. For this microhood, we're running a narrative alongside it called The Bridge to Everywhere. Kind of plays off this controversy over who's going to build the next bridge in Detroit. So we've got this bridge made out of intranet that clicks an inch further every time somebody invests in the property. And the Detroit River is 50,000 inches wide, which is nice. We started adding a whole bunch of characters to the project. That's Mayor Pingree from the 1890s, come back in a half cyborg form. There's the Detroit Ice Potato. DetroitIcePotato.com is actually a site that kind of riffed on the ice house that happened last winter. Zug is the evil monster. There's fantasy abandoned buildings where they used to make magic and the magic stopped and it's going to come back to life. All this kind of fun stuff. And then trying to reach out further to make this more significant, we started a grant program. We call them micro grants, fitting the theme. And so far, we've been able to share investment revenue to help fund a sculpture, this monumental kitty that's going in by where old Tiger Stadium used to be, in that lot. We put in $2,000 to help renovate a really beautiful apartment complex. I think John, who does that, is here somewhere. And then just recently, we raised, I think, $400 it's at, for art supplies for these girls that live on the east side right next to the Plymouth microhood. So we've been trying to spread the money around in good, interesting ways. Oh, and that right there is a square-inch check. We try to get the square-inch checks out and see if the bank will cash them. They haven't so far. And so in this exploration process of how do we make this stuff realer and realer, we had an interesting opportunity happen along the way. Did we not, Mary?
About 4 months ago, we were approached by our friend Jeff DeBryan, who is the president of the Corktown Residents Council. And he asked us if we wanted to, how does it go up? Sorry.
The right button.
Oh.
Yeah.
If we wanted to purchase 2 houses in Roosevelt Park, directly facing the train station. And we're crazy, so we said absolutely. And we started the Imagination Station, which is the rehabilitation of these 2 houses. One is burned badly. It had a fire about 6 months ago, and it will be turned into an outdoor rotating public art space. And the other one we're going to be doing as sustainable a rehab as possible on and turn it into a digital literacy center for the community. So our focus is art, technology, community, and sustainability. And documentation is a huge part of how we get the word out and how we get people involved. So far, all of the work that's been done on the Imagination Station has been completely volunteer. And we've started working with, instead of inches here, another social currency, but we're using watts instead because money is social energy and it's what gets things done. So without energy, there's no action. So we've started a program. We've put the first project up on Kickstarter where for every $1 you get a return on a watt. And then from there, we're having different programs within the project that you'll be able to use these watts towards. So going back into the neighborhood, we can't help but notice that These could be streets or rows or inches or houses. And so we started taking some of the data. We started working with a nonprofit called TEDxDetroit, and they gave us the parcel data for the neighborhood of Corktown, which we put into these maps that mimic our maps of Plymouth, which go along with profiles and commenting systems. So we put together a map of Corktown with a profile and a commenting system. And in order to get more involved in the community, we realized we need to reach out beyond Corktown. And so we've just recently started putting in more information about the rest of the city. All of the green dots that you see on the screen up here are every single property that is up for sale at the Wayne County property auction right now. And to be able to visualize that is extremely powerful, and to be able to interact with that information in a real-time, very searchable manner is mind-blowing. So we can't help but notice how that kind of information, how taking maps like this and putting this kind of information within the residents of the city of Detroit, how it can't directly apply to the resizing of the city and how big you actually can make an inch.
That was good. I don't think I have anything else
something
to
think
say.
about.
That was good. I don't know. I thought that was. I was kind of moved by that, Mary. That was I guess one of the exciting things I guess that we found out on this kind of adventure, like being playful but being open to serious ideas that could pop out of it, is that literally, I mean, these are these microhood maps, right? These correspond to these little inch properties in this little concrete curved structure. And like Mary said, we couldn't help but as we're playing with this going like, is that an inch or is that a house? Is that a line of inches or is that a road? And there really is no difference. I mean, the internet scales up, it scales down, it doesn't really matter what size. But we found out in doing this, like really mapping things out parcel by parcel and including ownership information, letting people present ideas about what they want to do with it and have conversations in that kind of context is exactly the kind of tool that will benefit future development in Detroit. And it's not an obvious thing. I think it'd be useful in other cities as well. Like I hope that this stuff is like, that we're working on is like cutting edge enough and like widely human applicable where it'll, somebody could use it in Los Angeles or Cleveland or like pick your place. These kinds of things would be interesting. But in Detroit, it kind of begs or it presents those ideas for like the parcel by parcel approach because there's so much that happens, whether it's a blighted house or whether it's a place where people are hanging out doing drugs or whether it's vacant land or whether it's a whole citywide effort to think about reshaping the city for the future. Detroit presents you with these ideas. And so one of the messages I want to say at the end too is that anybody who's entrepreneurial at all with digital media, you're a programmer, you're a coder, you're somebody who wants to do a startup, there are so many awesome opportunities in Detroit to come here and work. I know it's not as sexy or it's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to move to San Francisco or New York or whatever. But there are so many interesting opportunities and there's so many hard and really satisfying challenges in the city to think a little bit differently and to bring some of bring in connections from the network, bring in the new media, bring in internet stuff. And we hope you guys join this adventure. You can find the, if you want to see these projects, the websites are makeloveland.com and facethestation.com. The map that you see of Detroit and Corktown is currently up on intranet.com, so you can go there and check it out. It's in a really beta fashion right there. And if you want to say hi to us directly after or later on, you can hit us up here. Mary, do you have anything?
No, thank you for everything, and visit theintranet.com.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.